Soon as we start, soon as we get done. Okay, welcome everybody to the Town of Long Beach Town Council meeting for March of 2020. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So as far as opening remarks, this month we're meeting here. Next month we may have to meet at the gym. I don't know what's going to happen with the coronavirus pandemic, but we may want to spread out a little more. I think we're fine now, provided that the virus hasn't spread too far. We don't think it has, but we'll see what happens. So I guess that'll be posted on the website. All right, approval of minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the Town Council minutes of February 10th?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approval of Town Council executive session minutes from February 20th. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I make a motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approval of Town Council special meeting minutes from February 21st. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And finally, the approval of Town Council executive session minutes from February 25th. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Approve.
All in favor? Oh, no. Do I hear a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I was doing so good, too. All right, Police Department report. Chief?
The month of February, dispatch calls were 138, walk-ins were 17, we drove 3,970 miles. Hours worked was 723, there was 11 hours of overtime, 4 hours of that was for department meetings, 4 hours for training, and 2 hours for court. Part-time officers were 2 hours, reserve was 24. There was 39 traffic stops in Long Beach, 9 citations, 22 verbal warnings, 8 written warnings. 7 suspicious subjects were checked, 5 suspicious vehicles, 12 courtesy services, 4 town ordinance violations were checked. There was 12 alarms answered. On the report side, there was 1 arrest for operating intoxicated, 1 warrant arrest, 1 arrest for not receiving a license, and 1 arrest for driving while suspended. No crime reported in Long Beach.
Any questions? Police Commission report. Nick?
No report.
Volunteer Fire Department report. John?
Our month of February fire calls were 4. They broke down as trash fires, 3 false alarms, all in Long Beach. Our medical calls for February were 5. And that's about it. I just want to make a couple of comments. In April, we're going to attend the big national trade show for fire departments down in Indianapolis to do some more research on trucks and equipment. Another item for discussion would be, we occasionally have, well, don't occasionally, quite often we have false alarms where there is no key holder. So if you have an automatic alarm, the idea is that there's a key holder in town somewhere that the alarm company will make us aware of so that we don't have to break in the event you have a fire alarm call at your house. We've had a couple of places that actually had manual alarms that did not go through ADT type central dispatch. So at that point, we're forced to break in if the alarms are going off. If you have we're doing a little research on what they call Knox boxes, which would be a box that you could have on the outside of your home where a key, much the same as a real estate key box, would be available, so we could use a standard key to get into that and then get into your house without having to break in. But we can't really walk away from a fire alarm call. If there is no key holder, we're forced to make forcible entry, which we don't like to do, but just for the general public's knowledge, that if you have an automatic alarm, try to have a key holder set up, a local key holder, so we can get in without breaking windows and that sort of thing.
Questions? Fire Commission report, John.
Fire Commission, we're still working on station input. We found some drawings from about 4 different fire stations that have been recently built and or in the process of being built. We're working on having a Fire Commission meeting a little bit later this month. We had some vacation times on some of the members, so we've got our Fire Commission established, but we still need to have our March meeting yet.
Street Department report.
Street Commission met.
No, Street Department.
Street Department.
Is Tom here?
I beg your pardon.
Okay. Never mind. Go ahead. Street
Okay,
Commission.
Street Commission. Street Commission met on February 19th. We talked about the plans to do some repairs on Moore Road near Dr. Haug's home. That's been a drainage issue up there. That'll have a little bit of street paving as well. We hope to schedule that shortly. The plans are complete. We just have to wait until the asphalt plants are closed and then go ahead and get that contract done. We're looking at a capital equipment budget for the street department. We canvassed all the equipment. Tom and I met. We went through all the different equipment that's involved with the street department. Try to get a little bit of an idea of ages and status on all the big ticket items. As you guys know, we bought all those trucks. We bought the plow trucks in one fell swoop after the fire, and a lot of that equipment was bought right after the fire a few years back, and they've been replaced once, but then we have to project out, in the coming 5 to 10 years what we'll need to replace, so we're in the throes of doing that. The community crossing grant application has been submitted to INDOT for review and approval. We should hear sometime in April about exactly how much of that money we will receive. There are a few streets in town that don't show up on the INDOT map. We're working on that to determine whether they're dedicated streets. When Chris gets back, we're going to work on that as well. So those were the 4 big items at the Street Commission.
Okay. Any questions? Park Board, John?
My understanding, there was no park board meeting last month, right, Kendra? So there's no report for this month. Community Center report for March. Bob Gallagher put together a committee that will be working on upgrading the courtyard. They met with the electrician to get pricing to upgrade the lighting in Mr. Jim Daner's office. Gutter downspouts and masonry repair replacement will proceed this spring. The large water main in the basement was replaced and all plumbing lines were flushed out. A historical plaque was installed near the front doors on the right as you go in, and the next meeting is April 6th, room 12, 4 p.m.
Questions? Water Board, Mary Lou?
The Water Board meets on the 4th Monday of each month, and most of you should have received a letter from the Water Board. First of all, asking about updating your information, because a lot of people have disconnected their landlines. If there's an issue, we can't get a hold of someone, so we kind of ask for that update. We also ask if you want to be on the email. It's not mandatory, but then you hear more things from the towns. The other thing is, the Water Board processes over 800 checks a month. And if more people would get on ACH, it would eliminate a lot of labor-intense things. And when you send your check in, you send in the little stub. When you have the bank, Chase or Horizon, send it in, they just send in a whole stack of checks. So then we have to figure out, and if there are 2 people in the town that have the same name, then we have an issue with that, trying to figure out who it belongs to. So those are some updates. We've hired 2 new people in the water department that's job sharing. And the other thing, we did eliminate the grace period at the end of this month. So you have to pay your water bill by the end of the month in which it happens. So if you got a bill, this is the last month you get the grace period.
In that regard, when are they put in the mail for a particular month, like let's say for March? They would go in the mail, what do we expect to receive on payments due by the end of the month?
I got mine today.
Oh.
And we put them in Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and we also get a lot of, many people, as you know, don't live here, so they have an address somewhere else. But if they have ACH, we don't know that. ACH means it comes out of your checking account. And so what we're just trying to do is get our arms around that. We also have I would say a very conscientious water department, and you could have a leak at your house, and then to try to notify somebody, especially if you've lived here a long time and you haven't updated your regular line, if you got rid of your landline. And they're good about it. They'll just go shut it down, especially if they know you don't live here year round. And then our job is to get a hold of you and say, do you think something's going on? So one guy had, so if you know what your water usage is, and I like to use water, but normally most people, like Bill uses 1 a month and other people 2 or 3. This guy had 80 units. So they and we run that report and they shut it down right away, and then we got a hold of him. And it was a leaky toilet. So it does add up. I think that's about it. We meet again on the 4th, we meet the 4th Monday of every month. Anybody's welcome to come to it.
Any questions? Budget and Finance, Bill?
The Budget and Finance met on February 12th. We talked about the normal subjects on the agenda, which was the sewer project in terms, and I know we're going to be talking about that again later. We talked about the water and town, the question about whether we move $51,000 from the water department to the towns. My suggestion, and I think it should be done, we should let that go. The money is safely ensconced in a Horizon Bank account, earning the same amount of interest in Bank 2 as it is in Bank 1, and I think there's no urgency in trying to move that. So that my recommendation would be we keep that until later on in the year. We talked about fines and fees, and I know some people know that we did send out some fines, and Chuck Watterson helped with that, who was sitting to my left. We did complete the annual report for 2019, have some summary sheets if anybody's interested in them. The one other thing that I was asked to do in the past, and I just forgot about it in the prior meetings, we currently have a balance in the town checking account of $1.83 million. We've determined that we will not put anything into CDs because we do have a lot of expenses that are coming up this year, and the idea of making an insignificant amount of additional insurance and tying up those funds and then having them not available in the month that we want them doesn't make any sense to me. Right now, what we've got is we have a major project going or planning to go on, which will cost the town probably close to $300,000, around $300,000 to get over $1 million worth of paving, which is the subject that John Wall just mentioned. We've got Stop 24, which we still have to work on. We've got an ADA beach stop. We have beach stop remediation, and we've got a fire station upgrade and truck, all of which will tug at our $1.83 million. So right now we're in very good shape. Though none of the funds went even over 90% of the budgets for 2019. So we were well within budget for each of about 13 funds. So things are very good.
Bill?
Yes.
A question. If you're looking to discuss it, what is the status of the legal fees that were brought in, all the various crap that's come down the pipe? Are we in good shape with that, or?
We do have, right now the special BZA had a check that I wrote this month for, I don't know, $3,000 or $4,000. The other lawsuit that we've got going on seems to be, I think I wrote a check for $170 for that. So none of the expenses are extravagant right now. So I don't see anything, but that could all change. But right now things look okay. We've been spending about $5,000 a month with Brady Nelson, and in 2016 it averaged $15,000 a month. So things are at least moderated.
Human Resources, Bill?
I'm sorry?
Human Resources?
Human Resources, we did not have a meeting, but we will have our first meeting of the year tomorrow at 3 p.m. here in the council room.
We did have a special meeting for the water department to talk about sewers. Not so much sewers, but when the sewers go through, it would be ridiculous if the water department didn't use that opportunity to switch out some of the old pipes that are on Lakeshore Drive. And so we had a meeting just to and it was open to the public, and we had Haas and Associates here to find out, because it would be silly for us to let them tear up the road and then us to go back and fix piping that should have been fixed when we did that. And there still are some lead pipes that need to be upgraded and removed. or they call them goosenecks. So.
Are we talking about sewers now?
No, that was a special water board meeting, just so that they're going to piggyback on with the program to upgrade some of the things on
Yeah, and if we could, let's save public comments for the public comment section so we can get through the agenda, because we've got quite an agenda.
I do want to compliment the water department. The 6'4" guy that you hired was able to move us up an hour to keep me off a chair. And so we're now on proper time.
Austin.
Good deal, okay. All right, Building Commission. Building Commission met on February 14th, Valentine's Day. The improvements for Stop 24 were approved. 2310 Lakeshore Drive, the owner there was advised that he needs to combine his lots. This is a fellow who wants to build a deck next to his house, and we have an ordinance that says that every developed lot has to have a primary structure. And so his lots need to be combined, and he was reminded of that a second time. A number of citations were issued and are in process. Um, 2816 and 2816 Brentwood Way and 2809 Lindale were both granted permits after being issued variances. 2826 Lakeshore Drive was given a permit to shore up their deck and pergola at the waterfront. And 4 permits were approved for replacement of repaired seawalls at 2216 Lakeshore Drive, 2224 Lakeshore Drive, 2228 Lakeshore Drive, and 2234 Lakeshore Drive. And that was it. Board of Zoning Appeals, their meeting actually occurred prior to our last town council meeting and has already been reported on. They meet this Friday at 1 o'clock in the community center. Advisory Plan Commission, Nick?
Advisory Planning Commission met February 17th, 7 o'clock. A couple quick comments. One probably falls more under the council update, but we do have a lobbyist firm that was hired by the town council who is still active through the legislative session, which ends this week, trying to protect the public interest and use of the lakefronts. And so that continues. There's a few days left for amendments, and so we'll know a little bit more. I don't know if there's anything you want to add there.
We should know where we're at in a couple of days. So that's sort of it.
On Stop 24, it was mentioned earlier that the permit was approved for those modifications. If you recall, last year we put it out to public bid. Bids came up higher than what we thought the project would cost, an estimated cost. So we did reduce the scope a bit on the project itself and are ready to put that back out to bid here, hopefully this month, if not in April. Let's see. At the APC meeting, we talked about special BZA board member appointments. I don't know if that's set on the agenda later. Okay. Let's see. We had some discussion on replacement seawalls, particularly around language for emergency repairs, trying to make that cleaner in the ordinance, how folks might go about doing that. Had some conversation around coastal engineers who are approved by the town, some language around what qualifies them to be a certified coastal engineer by the property owners that use those. Also had some discussion preliminarily about some interest around possibly opening up the beach stops for certain periods of time throughout the year to allow dogs to go down to the lakefront in the future when there is a beach. Just discussion at this point. It'll probably be a continued point of conversation at future APC meetings. Obviously, it'd have to go through a full process and then come back to the council here before approving anything. We also talked about golf carts as well. Heard from a number of residents having some interest in having golf carts being able to be used more than just going to and from the country club. But again, nothing's been drafted at this point, just preliminary discussion. All are welcome to attend those meetings. The next one is March 17th at 7 o'clock in this room. Thank you.
Do I hear a motion to approve the reports?
I make the motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, building permit revenue report?
The building permit revenue report for February 2020, 7 permits totaling $853,000 with revenue of $8,580. 3 electrical permits issued with revenue of $56.40, collected on a total of $564. $100 received for 1 street cut permit issued to AT&T. Legal expenses paid in February 2020 were $12,046.15, $11,536.15 to Brazy, Nelson and James, $510 to Knight Hoppy, Koenig and Knight. We also paid 2 payments happened in January and February to Corden Group for a total of $12,725.
Do I hear a motion to approve those reports?
One quick thing. There was an $800,000 number that, I don't think that was correct. The building permit revenues.
$8,580 revenue, $853,000 worth of permits.
Got it.
The total of the permits.
Do I hear a motion to approve those reports?
I make a motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, unfinished business. All right, let's go to the sewer. Basically, our plan initially was to sewer Lakeshore Drive, and we hoped that we'd be able to charge the capital costs of that improvement to just the people who wanted to use the sewer. We were told by Michigan City Sanitary, who was told by the state's revolving fund, which is going to loan us the money, that that's not going to be acceptable, and that they need everybody who lives on either side of Lakeshore Drive to contribute to the capital fund. So what we were hoping to do is not going to be possible. And basically, I don't know if we have numbers, but we have the last numbers for those.
It's all, there's a fact sheet that was put together that has some more information in front of you.
And
Do
so,
you want the questions to wait till the end?
well, I think, this is maybe an exception, I guess.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and open up the questions about sewer.
Do you have a fact sheet too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
My question was,
No, your name and address we have to have. We need to have your name and address for you,
my name is
Doug.
Bob Rule, R-U-L-E.
Okay. You know what, Bob? You want everybody to? Okay, Bob, can I have you come over here so they want to see your face on TV?
What do you want to hear?
Actually, right over here.
Where?
Right in front of her. Yeah, actually, right. She'll show you. She knows the spot.
Okay, start over?
Go ahead.
Okay, Bob Rule, 2901 Lakeshore Drive. My question would be, the state came back with a response to who would be required to participate in the initial cost. How did they come up with the rationale that both sides of Lakeshore Drive? I mean, what was so significant about both sides? And I tied it into, I recall quite a while back, there was going to be a survey conducted. I don't know if it's been done or not. I heard some rumors that there was, that there was a 45% participation of people on the hillside or the south side of Lakeshore Drive. 45% of people were in favor of it. I'm not, that sounds like an astounding figure, but if that's what it is, that's what it is. But I'm just curious why, I can understand people that live on the beach. That would be an absolute requirement. And at one point, I know that the option would be that people on the south side would have the option to initially tie into it or at some point in the future to do it. So if in fact, this is longer than I thought it would be, if in fact it requires people on the north and south side, then why not, as somebody had suggested, the entire area of Long Beach?
So the problem with it, and it makes sense from the state's point of view, when you look at the way the bond gets paid off, it starts off low, and then there's balloon payments in the middle, and they get quite a bit bigger toward the middle. I think the state's concerned that if enough people on the south side of Lakeshore Drive don't decide to hook up those middle years, we're not going to have enough money to pay off the bond. So I think that was the concern.
So current status would be that to do this, you would mandate both north and south.
Well, that's what they're telling us. We have three choices. One would be to do nothing.
Yeah.
Not a good choice, but you can see some of the explanations for that on this sheet that came out. Two would be to do just Lakeshore Drive, and three would be do the entire town. And those are pretty much our three choices.
You might just note, I think we brought it up at the last meeting, as part of this project, the Lakeshore Drive project is phase one. Our engineers had looked at the whole town. In fact, I think 10 or 12 years ago, the whole town was under discussion to be sewered, and for whatever reason, they dropped the plan. But there is a overall plan that will be, we got to show the state not only Lakeshore Drive, but they're going to ask, well, what are you going to do in the future? Do you have some plans for the future? And we will have plans. Doesn't mean we're going to institute them right away, but we better have plans, like I mentioned we talked about before, is we don't want to be put in a position like basically we're put in a Lakeshore Drive where you're mandated. You have to do something, and we didn't have a plan 2 years, 3 years ago when this all came about. We had no plan. And it's taken this long just to get where we are right now, and we still don't have a sewer, but at some point, hopefully, we will have one. But another point that Bob might have should mention is when they put this sewer line in, there's going to be laterals on both sides. So you'll be able to hook up to the sewer, and we won't have to tear up the road again, because if we didn't do that, if we just gave everybody an option on the south side and then you later want to hook on, then you're going to be tearing up the road 40 or 50 different places. And so that is another, the infrastructure is already going to be put in when the sewer goes in. If you don't want to hook up, you don't have to, but you'll have to pay the capital charge. That's what the rub is, I think, with a lot of people. You'll have to pay the capital charge, but you won't have to pay a penalty or a fee to actually hook in if you don't want to hook in right now. You'll be able to at some future date because you'll have the lateral already to your property line.
And actually, we had it set up where if you lived on the south side of Lakeshore Drive and you elect not to hook up, or you elected with the original plan that we had, there was a penalty that you had to pay for hooking up late. And when you look at the numbers involved in that penalty, and this is what our accountant came up with, after 5 years you paid $5,000. After 10 years you paid $12,000. I'm just estimating. But when you look at what it would cost, and everybody had to be hooked up by 15 years, and the penalty was like $23,000 at that point. If you looked at those numbers, it really was pretty much a wash as to whether you, in fact, it was cheaper to hook up earlier. The cost, if you added up times 12 of how much it's going to cost you a month, was actually cheaper to do it at the beginning. That's not much consolation for somebody who's going to not hook up in 15 years and sell their house in 14 years, but that's how the numbers worked out. Other questions?
Hi.
Over here.
Abby Neary, 2019 Lakeshore Drive. So at the last town council meeting, Tom King had proposed that you do some research about how many homes on the north side of Lakeshore Drive actually had their septic tanks on the north side of Lakeshore Drive. It was implied that it was really only the houses built after 2014. And looking at tax records, that would have only been 10 homes. So I'm wondering how many homes here are we talking about? I know there's about 10 on Pumpkin Hall, but for all the other residents of Lakeshore Drive, I think we'd like to understand how many houses are really at risk that we're paying for.
You're talking about the houses who have their septic systems on the north side of their house?
Yes.
Do we know that number?
Yeah, I don't think we know that number. I think I saw your post on Nextdoor. You estimated maybe like 10 homes, somewhere in that neighborhood. Problem is the moratorium applies to 140 homes, so it's not just 10. So the concern that many of us have, and I'll speak for myself and others can weigh in, is we don't know, the county is not willing or interested in scaling back the moratorium. So we know that. The other concern is we don't know if at what point in time they might say, okay, all of Lakeshore Drive is required as a same moratorium. And as Mr. Coker mentioned, we wouldn't have a plan in that place in time if we don't do anything right now. So it's really not a question of 10 homes, a dozen homes, it's really 140 homes that don't have an option at this point.
if I could just butt in here, there's also on the south side of Lakeshore Drive, there's several homes, I don't have an exact number, but there's several homes, one close to mine, actually, that their septics have failed, and they're on pump and haul. So it's only going to increase with time, because a lot of these homes are older homes, their septic fails, there's no place else to put a new septic, and the county's not going to let you put in a septic if you're on the south side, if you have a sewer. So, we're sort of...
But yeah, okay, if there's a sewer in front of it, because the rule is, 150 feet from a sewer, then you're required to hook up to it. But if their septic fails, that's assuming their septic fails, and we put in sewers. But right now, those people can all still repair their septic tanks.
No.
On the south side of Lakeshore Drive?
No.
Not necessarily.
No.
Depends on what your configuration of your lot is and whether you've got enough. The older septic systems had septic tanks and dry wells. Now the county no longer allows dry wells.
Right.
So you have to have a drain field. It takes up a lot more square footage of land in order to make a system that they'll approve a system. So there are some people that won't be able to do upgrades regardless of what the sewers are doing. That's what John's talking about. There are people that are actually in that shape now.
But if you had drain field, you would be able to, is that it?
Yeah.
I didn't hear you that.
If you have a drain field, you'd be able to do it.
Well, it depends on whether you meet the criteria. It depends on when it was put in and whether it meets the criteria. If you sell a house now, you have to certify to the buyer that you have a certified approved septic system. So if it all depends on what they mandate, what they require. It depends on how many bedrooms there's all kinds of things that go into that calculation as to whether you'll have an adequate lot for what you. So your blanket statement that everybody that has a septic system now will be okay is not true.
Yeah, I think that what a lot of us residents have been looking to know is understand the magnitude of the impact. And I asked this question over a year ago in a council meeting. We still don't have an answer. And so that's the point that I'm trying to make is,
Well, we would have to go out and figure out each house's septic system and what it was like, and that I don't know that we're in that mode.
I thought we were going to go to the county and ask them to.
But I guess, so if you look at the fact sheet too, we try to lay out some of what we heard kind of on both sides, because again, just trying to put all thoughts out there that we're hearing. Problem is, if you do nothing, you still don't have a solution for 140 homes. We had an option on there, I think we talked about maybe pushing back on the county. I don't know that that's such a wise decision either, because again, they're not willing to come off of their moratorium today, and further pushing of them may result in a worse action than we had thought. So again, it's not a matter of whether it's 10 or a dozen, it's 140 homes that don't have an option, and it's hard to not do anything for those people. And again, our original intent when we looked at the sewer, and that's why I was a proponent from the get-go, one, to get septics off the lakefront. I think that's a positive for the community. And two, it was our initial impression that only those north of Lakeshore Drive would have to pay, and potentially Southside would at a later date. It might be more expensive later, but that they wouldn't be required to. And certainly that is a new dynamic that's changed that makes the decision even more difficult, because there's people like you, I'm assuming, who have a perfectly fine septic, and this is an added expense that you probably don't want to pay for, and I can understand that.
So 2 questions that I'll get out of the way. One is, have the minutes of the discussions with the county been made public, that we could read why they enacted the moratorium and the whole dialogue that went on there? I'd just be curious to
Talking
understand.
about the moratorium from the health department?
Yeah.
There was no discussion. They just did it.
But there's got to be reasoning behind it there.
Right.
Well, you'd have to ask them, but we had no discussion with them before that was
Would
done.
it be incumbent upon the board to seek out an answer?
They did, yeah. I mean,
We went to the meeting when they announced it.
the only
asked them for an explanation.
Well, I assume it had something to do with the septic that was hanging out over Lake Michigan.
So they did cite, and there's some News Dispatch articles that you can read as well, but they cited essentially the catalyst was septics that were starting to be exposed and enter into the lakefront. That's what started it.
So that's what started the moratorium.
That's what started, but then further, they had an interest in getting all septics off of the lakefront, and that's what they decided.
So my last question is, and then I'll cede the floor to anyone else, is with the regulations or not regulations, I don't know what the right term is, but with the health department's mandate that typically within 150 feet of a sewer you have to connect in, what assurances do we have that they don't start requiring, one street back from Lakeshore Drive putting it in?
There's no assurance.
So once we start, there's no
assurance except that engineeringly possible it won't be done, it can't be done. When the rest of the town, if and when the rest of the town gets sewers, they won't be connected into the Lakeshore Drive sewer. It's going to be coming down Cheselton and Moore Road.
So there's not going to be the pumping stations anymore on Lakeshore Drive to go through?
There'll be 3 pumping stations on Lakeshore Drive for the Lakeshore Drive sewers. But I think that the system is designed to take in eventually the folks up there where Bill is, stop 16 and all the way to 14 and 13. It'll take in those homes, but it won't take in any more because capacity-wise it's not designed to take any more than what it's designed for. So.
Thank you.
I don't know if you went to the meeting, but would they not be able to find the health department meeting on ALCO?
I'm sure it's got to be
Yeah,
there somewhere.
you can always go on ALCO TV and just click on that and find that.
Isn't there a Freedom of Information Act that you can also go to and find all these things?
We have to have your name and
Then let's just go at 2610 Lakeshore Drive. Isn't there a Freedom of Information Act that she can go and make public to find out what goes on here and beyond conversations and how this got developed?
I'm sure you could file that with the county
File
health
that,
department,
right?
sure. Yeah.
Get your information?
Yeah. Now, there is going to be a public hearing on this. I tried to get a date from the Michigan City Sanitary, but they couldn't give me a date. But it has to be within 30 days of when we gave them preliminary approval to go ahead. So it has to be within 30 days of 2/21. So stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have that public hearing. I'm sure it's going to be over at the community center because I would imagine there'll be a crowd, and I guess then we can hear the information actually from the horse's mouth, Michigan City Sanitary, who's really making arrangements for the financing and the construction of this whole project. Yeah. Yeah.
May I make a comment?
Yeah, over here.
Thank you. My name is Donna Kavanaugh. I live at 721 on Avondale Drive. I am so sorry to my whole community. I've been here since the 50s. I've seen this 4 times, and you all, I have the greatest respect for all of you. What we're all going through as a community now is devastating. I remember when the Board of Health said that we had to close down these few houses, and they had to pump and haul. Now we have devastation. We have communities, and I'm in the media, so full disclosure, I freelance for all the networks all over the Midwest. I have a PBS station in South Bend. I have a radio station. I brought the South Bend station here because I was so afraid that as we started getting hit in November, in the storm in November, that what went underneath our streets on Lakeshore Drive would be compromised. We have gas lines and water lines, and I started talking to them about that. I live a half a block back in. My friends say, oh, Donnie, you'll have waterfront property. My basement is flooding. I had an engineer come in. The water is flooding in my basement right now from the lake, because I'm on the low point at South 21 at the bottom of Silvertip. What's happening with my friends that are trying to sell their homes right now, and I hope we don't have that fire sale like we did in the 80s, we've been told, and I've been doing a lot of research, the Board of Health has to do this, okay? They can't have the septic systems, as you've been telling us, and we appreciate that, going to the lake like they were floating away in December. And so, if you have a house back in from Lakeshore Drive, I would suggest, and this is what I'm doing, call the Board of Health and ask them to evaluate your septic system. So if in fact you decide to sell or you transfer your home, that you would know what they have to say to you, okay? And for everybody out there, I really appreciate what you're doing here, and I appreciate all of you. It is a very difficult situation, and if they tell us we have to get septics on Lakeshore Drive, we're going to have to do it, whether we want to or not. If they say we have to sewer the whole town, eventually, we're going to have to do it. I used to own the Gordon Beach Inn in Union Pure, Michigan. Right after I sold it, Chittenden County came in and said everybody had to be sewered. It was $10,000 for each homeowner. This is not an easy situation, but we're going through so much with the Lakeshore property, and I appreciate your taking my comments, but I would suggest that everybody here call the Board of Health, see what your system looks like, whether it's feasible if you decide to sell your house or stay in your house. I would suggest that you do that, and thank you for what you're doing for us.
Any other comments?
Joe Sherman, I'm the president of the Shoreland Hills Property Owners Association at Stop 31. I guess my question is, we own a couple of lots that are for the beach and beach access only, no houses. Are you going to make us hook up to the sewer system?
I wouldn't think if they're dedicated beach stops and can never be sold,
Never be.
Then I
it's for
think-
the benefit of the association.
then it would be silly to put a plug in there, yeah.
Number two, you're talking about a pumping station at the corner of Moore Road and Lakeshore Drive.
I don't know, is that what,
Yes.
has that been determined?
Yes,
Okay.
Do you have a feel for where that's going to be located?
this will be on the town right away, probably as you're going towards Moore Road at the corner on the right.
Southwest side? Southwest?
I'm
That
pretty-
might be, some of that's Michigan City property in through there, right at 31 when you come down.
No, that's all along the,
Yeah, it's all
right down
it's all
there.
on, that's all been, it's gonna be in that area.
So on the southwest corner there, across from the real
Estate office, right.
Thank you very much.
Other comments?
Bob Boyce, Stop 29.
Why don't you come up here, Bob?
Want me to crawl over here?
Can you do that? Yeah. We made everybody else.
Yeah.
I gotta be fair, you know?
I don't normally agree with a lot of what happens with the town council, but this time I have to. I've been involved in two where they got rid of the septics and they put sewer lines in DuPage County in Illinois. But it's on Clarendon Hills Road. And they mandated that within 1 year of that sewer line being put in, that you had to hook up. And that was it. And it was a recapture cost. Back in '79, it was over $10,000. But you didn't have any choice, and it was good for the whole neighborhood. And you see that a lot. Sometimes in a municipality, they'll say upon change of title. Now, I'm gonna end up with more stubs on my property than most people in this room, because I'm gonna probably end up with 4 for the vacant lots that will someday be sold.
Oh, yeah, if they're sellable.
Okay, so it's gonna cost me a good chunk of change, but that's the fact of life. And I think that it's good for the whole community, and people that want to opt out, that want to kind of feel that, that's fine. But then, maybe, just maybe, if they want to stay on septic, that there should be a provision that every 3 years that their septic is recertified. So they're not sitting with a damaged septic and playing cat and mouse. I mean, I never had the option in any of the property I ever owned. You just had to hook up, plain and simple. And you know what? Life isn't fair, so I suppose that's the best I can tell you. Thank you.
Any other comments? So again, we'll put it on the website. Maybe we'll try and send an email out to Bill about this public hearing?
Yeah.
Okay. Last month, the tree ordinance was on the...
Are you going to post the handout on the website too?
Yeah, it'll be
Okay,
posted, yeah.
thank you.
So last month, the tree ordinance was on the agenda, but it disappeared this month. I don't know, is anybody prepared to talk about the tree ordinance? Or should we put that on the agenda for next month?
I think keep it under unfinished business.
Okay, so Bill, let's just make sure that's on the agenda for next month,
Tree
okay?
ordinance?
Yeah. New business. So more temporary protection has been installed at stop 23. The last storm was threatening to take out Lakeshore Drive. I believe at the next building commission meeting, we'll have to discuss a more permanent measure to try and make sure we don't lose Lakeshore Drive at stop 23. So that will be happening this Friday over at the community center. We're a little late on this, but we failed to elect a vice president for the town council. I'd like to nominate Nick Meyer. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Congrats. Aye. All right. Last month, I believe I was out of town and I tried to arrange for a special BZA member to be appointed by the town council. There was some miscommunication and Dr. Dick Houck got appointed. Unfortunately, he'd already been appointed by the Advisory Plan Commission. So I'd like to have us rescind that appointment and appoint Mr. Bill Cusack to the special BZA so that hopefully we can get one of our lawsuits closer to being done with.
So what's Houck on then?
What's what?
What's
He will still be on it. It's just he needed to be appointed by the APC.
Okay.
And this gentleman needs to be appointed by the town council.
Okay.
And then I have 3 appointments, but I have to wait till I get resignations from all the people on the other BZAs that we appointed before I do that.
Okay.
So I'd like to nominate Bill Cusack. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, park board appointment. We had a resignation from the park board, and I've forgotten the lady who resigned.
Jerry Massey.
That's it, yeah. So I'd like to nominate Anita Remages to the park board.
Isn't that a council? No.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why
So
we're doing it
5
here.
of us.
Yeah. So I've nominated her. Any discussion, or do I hear a second first, I guess?
I'll second.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that was good. Public comments. Did we get through all the public comments already? Oh, we don't?
I have one.
Okay. Got one.
Hi, Tom Stevenson, 2515 Lakeshore Drive. Has a decision been made regarding the pressure system versus the gravity system?
Yes.
And what is this? What is the
Gravity. Gravity system.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Never mind, I take mine back.
Okay. Any other public comments?
I just have one question back to the sewers, Mike Henry, 25 Lakeshore Drive. Phil, on the, John, on the numbers, the $127.76 a month, that's for 20 years or 35 years?
I think that's for as long as the bond issue. I thought the bond issue.
It was 35. I thought it was either 35 for the sewer lines themselves. The lift station was a separate loan amount for $2 million and some change. That one was for 20 years. So after 20 years, it would appear that that monthly amount will go down because that first portion of the capital charge would be gone.
So the project is, there's a guesstimate, it's just about $8 million?
7.2.
7.2, but that's a,
Because I was going to say, if you take the 290 homes times the 127 times the 20 years, that comes to $8 million right there. There's a low interest loan, there's some special loan interest that we're going to get.
We are.
We're going to get.
Yes.
2% or 2.5, I think.
And so if it comes out to about $8 million for $127 a month for 290 homes. I can calculate with the other 15 years at $127 for the 290 homes, but that's substantially more than
Did you say one piece runs 35 years and one piece runs 20 years?
Total cost of project, $5.1 million for the sewer mains, $2.2 million for the lift stations. All this information's on the, if you go to the homepage of the website, this is the, whose report is this? Michigan City?
less than $8 million.
7.3, And, here, let's see.
We got the senior citizen discount.
Well, it just seems to me that if you do the math, 127 might be might be too much. It might come out about $12 or $13 million.
Well, total.
I know there's interest involved.
Total principal and interest for the main surface itself totals to be 7.6 million. Total principal and interest for the lift stations is 2.7. So if you take the interest as well, with whatever 2.7 plus 5.6, that's total payment over that duration. And the payment schedule has you going through 2057 for the mains, and then the year of 2042 for the lift stations.
It's that money over time thing. Now, we could just pay cash for it, and we'd save all that interest. That might be good, but probably not.
That table's on the website you're saying, though, Nick? So Mike, you can grab that table.
Yeah. And you're not really going to know until we actually get bids for the project. You know, the engineers have been estimating best guess is 7.2 or whatever. Could be more, could be less. I mean,
what's the projection on the interest rates?
All I'm saying, John, is that
2 and 2.3.
290 homes.
I understand what you're saying.
Right. It's almost double the cost of the project.
We can have the accountant check the numbers again.
Yeah, I'm reading from the report. 7.3 million SRF loan, 20 and 35 years, 2% and 2.3%.
Maybe I had a problem.
Bill?
When you, Bill Hayes Road 2011.
Bill, gotta be fair. Need you over there. Come on, man. You want special favors?
When you started, you talked about 3 ways.
Yes.
And we talked about north, south, and the rest of the town. I've heard a very quiet group talking about the rest of the town. Is that still on the board, or is it possible?
This plan would allow us to do that, but probably down the road.
If you can get the rest of the town to support such a thing, I think it would go a lot quicker. But yeah, well, you don't know unless you ask. You know, I know there's a lot of people who would like the whole town sewer, but there's a lot of people that don't. So.
Any other public comments?
Linda, 2503 Lakeshore Drive. In regards to having the whole town do it, we did propose that at one time, and it seemed like there was a pushback on that. It's why I recollect from being at the town meeting. So now Lakeshore Drive is putting the bill for this project, which is a 2-phase project. The first project is approximately $7 million. Phase 2 is going to be how many millions more. My point is, since I'm paying for the initial cost of the store installation, will there be any, I know you don't have the answers probably, but down the road when we do hope to come in, that's our ultimate goal, is that everyone can have stores, am I going to recoup some of my initial funds moving forward over the years until we do about the whole town?
It would probably be a separate bond issue for the rest of the town.
Yeah.
And then I guess another thing would be is, what phase are we still in the fact-finding mode in this? So basically, you guys have a plan, and you're presenting it to us, plan for the gravity system, and really no option for paying right for it. You're hooking up where you're paying for the maintenance stuff.
Yeah, the public hearing is the final step before the town council will consider whether...
Is April?
It'll be within 30 days of February 21st.
Well, later than that.
I think they're mandated to do within 30 days.
It's not going to be until later.
So we're just like a public hearing, so that everyone has the right to say what they think, and then the board is going to make a decision, or say so, or we're going to reflect back to that survey seen in 2018, which we had new homes built, we had people come and go. And so we're reflecting back on something that we had 45% consensus from the people on the Lakeshore Drive, which is really irrelevant this time because when the people come and go, we have new development.
Who presents at the public hearing?
Michigan City Sanitary.
Oh, okay, so we're in the audience?
Yeah.
Okay, we're not presenters, okay.
I believe, we might be up there too.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a limit to how many times you can take a survey. At some point, projects need to move along or nothing ever gets done.
But 45% is not the majority.
Well,
the majority of the entire Lakeshore Drive is put in.
Yeah, but we're not given the option of just sewer on the north side. That's the problem.
Another problem being on the south side is that I'm paying for something that I don't need.
Is the survey available? Can we get copies of the survey?
That was all sent out, over a year ago.
More than that.
A year and a half ago, it was sent out.
The survey was, but what about the results?
Yeah, they were on the old website. We can try to get those back up again. 45%, I think, was the number. That wasn't 45% of South Side residents. That was 45% of those surveyed. So it was at least some attempt to try to get an indicator of, hey, if we had a sewer available, would you connect? Would you pay to connect? And 45% of respondents said yes, they would.
Of course, originally, when at a meeting they held over in the school, they talked about the survey and said the parameters of that, and they said they were going to survey the south side by itself to get a determination how many of those people would participate. Why couldn't that have been done?
I think there's 68 Southsiders said they wanted to hook up. I believe it's 60 some out of the 100. How much was 48? I don't remember.
150.
I guess.
Yeah, out of
Did
150.
we see that survey? Yeah, it was done, it's obviously.
Yeah, like I said, I think it was on the old website. Didn't transfer over, so we could get that back on the site. But I recall, Joey's not here, but I recall they surveyed all of Lakeshore Drive because they also asked the question, what type of system would you prefer? Gravity?
I think it's really important for the number of people.
Sure.
How many on the south side by itself were in favor of it?
Right. Yeah, and I think ballpark 60 of the 150, whatever happened, 45% of surveyed.
Which is my point, it's not the majority, and you mostly use the term majority in your documentations that you're supposed to give today and also on your website. It's not the majority, so your majority of the community, unless your truck is not in favor of the project. I want you really to understand that, how you really feel about it. We're giving no ultimatum, you're going to pay $127 or $150.
But there's some realities that the town is facing in terms of the health department and the opportunity to do something for the guys on the north side of Lakeshore Drive. There's some realities there that we don't control. So even if we all said we don't want to do it, I mean, if they mandate that the whole town has to get sewer, we won't have any choice at that point.
We have a problem with people on the north side and agree with the pollution of the lake, that's obvious. People on the south side are also paying for this. So I have a whole community behind me that benefits from the lake. Also, maybe they should help kick in some of the costs right up front, like I am.
Well, I mean, everybody's entitled to an opinion on it, but in terms of an environmental issue, I mean, I'm personally in favor of the whole town becoming sewered at some point. I think there's a little bit of a disconnect, though. That sewer down Lakeshore Drive will not accommodate the rest of the town by virtue of the engineering involved. The hill, the backside of the hill will have to go out the other way. So it's not as if we sewered the whole town, because you mentioned a couple of minutes ago that you thought that you might get some relief on what you've expended to date at the point where the rest of the town got sewered. That really won't apply because that...
Yeah, but they go down past the temperature already set down Harvard could have something for those folks and migrate on the left. I didn't understand that.
Yeah, and there's a statute that says that if somebody doesn't have an opportunity to hook up to a sewer system, they can't be forced to pay for it. So the rest of the town who wouldn't have the opportunity to hook up to this can't be asked to pay for it. That's the reality.
Kate Graham, 2417 Lakeshore Drive. But I don't think when you gave us that survey, 2018 or whatever, I don't think the options were all on the table that we were going to have to pay if we didn't hook up. I don't recall hearing that at all.
You're right. But things have changed. Now we don't have the option. Simple
Well,
as
that
that.
survey isn't valid.
Yeah, that's right. It's not valid.
And you gotta put that survey out and move over.
Bob, if we started all over again with a brand new survey, it
You
wouldn't
can't come
change.
back after the fact and say it was flawed and expect us to accept it.
It won't. A new survey won't change the immediate realities that we're dealing with.
I understand the realities, and there's another side of that story. Had they had a BZA that acted responsibly, we wouldn't be talking about sewers. They should have held accountable for overriding ordinances through the years, and that's exactly what they did.
Unfortunately, no one on this board made those decisions to allow.
You know, that's always like that, it was the other board.
I've been on the board for 5 years now. I didn't make the decision to allow septics or homes to be built where they are. So now I'm faced with the decision to either say no, to not have sewers, right? And then what does that do for the 140 people on Lake Shore Drive? I don't know what to do.
I think
How do you
open
leave this
sewer
straight?
is the right approach. I'm not questioning that.
Sure.
This is how to get there in an equitable fashion for all parties. I mean, and I can't satisfy all parties, but I think the people on the south side have a valid argument.
Yeah.
And you're forcing them to do something financially they don't need to do. They've got septic systems that are functioning fine.
I would say we're open to suggestions and feedback from people. I mean, again, I certainly sympathize with people who are on the south side of Lake Shore Drive who have perfectly fine working septic systems. But if Michigan City is saying we can't get a loan in order to pay for it, then we don't have that option. And so, you know, we've had some discussion around, you know, can we talk to Sender and Company and the accounting firm, you know, can we do something where, you know, is there an option where those who are south, if we could commit to a certain percentage of those who would be willing to hook up voluntarily, south and, well, north would be mandated, but if south would be voluntarily say, yes, I'll pay for that capital charge now, we got some percentage that would do it enough to get the loan. And then those that didn't would maybe have to pay at a later point in time if they didn't want to hook up now. At least that gives some optionality. But I don't know that the state's going to allow us to do that.
Where's the documentation posted about the loan, about the, you know, ability not to, that everyone has to hook up or they can't get the loan?
That's what our attorneys told us, and we're trying to get that in writing from Michigan City to spell that out, that it requires 100% participation.
And, you know, we're not happy about this because our plan was really to allow it to be an option. And now it's being forced down our throat that that's not an option. And so, you know, our options are really limited.
Actually, Bob, Haas and Associates, when we had the water department meeting, it's Jim Maurer brought all that information about why we wouldn't be able to get the loan unless everyone was on the plan. So I don't know if that's on the website.
We don't have it on the website. No, I haven't seen it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I agree with you with the comment. You know, as far back as I can remember, maybe 6 years ago, there were people, even in this room, who were signing petitions against septics at Lake Shore Drive. So now the chickens have come home to roost. Now, you can't have it both ways. And it seems like this is all a monetary thing. Well, money's not worth much anymore. And when your water bill sometimes exceeds $100 a month, this kind of looks like a bargain. And I think 10 years down the road, it's going to look like a real bargain. Because if you can look what your money was worth 10 years ago, what it's worth today, and if this stays as fixed costs, it won't look so bad. And if we delay it, and you kick the can down the road, that number's going to go up. And more septics are going to fail. And it's going to be a death spiral. So the people that want to complain about it today, they might be right in the mix 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road. Then the story's going to change. That's all I got.
Also, when we did our group with Haas and Associates, Jim Maurer told us that we've already made arrangements with Michigan City. There's almost like a line because Potawatomi wants to get on the sewers, and so we need to get and Trail Creek. We need to get established, or we won't have a place to go to.
Well, and actually, I spoke with Mike Cuss from Michigan City Sanitary. I raised that issue because I'm looking for, you know.
So is it like?
Well, and I found out that actually isn't true.
Oh, okay.
That I asked how much capacity do you have? Could you take care of Potawatomi Park? Could you take care of us? Could you take care of Trail Creek? And he said yes, they could. So I sort of like that to be a reason, but it's not.
Okay. Well, that's what he.
I was at a meeting with him, and he said that was a possibility. So.
Okay. Well, maybe he's had a chance to look at the capacity too. I don't know. I just asked him.
Bigger lift stations too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other comments?
Can I ask one question? Linda, 2503 Lakeshore Drive. If you own a lot across the street from your home, are you also paying for that TN on the north side of your property?
Is that lot buildable?
Technically
If it could have a primary structure on it, then it's going to have to have a
It's a
hookup.
structure you have to pay for. It lots less than 40 feet. You need 50 feet to build a home on a piece of property on the north side, put your septic
It
in.
has to be 40 feet to build.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, it's buildable. It's buildable.
Then if it's buildable, it's going to have a
You're going to
hookup.
pay for this side and this side. And
Whether the lot's buildable according to our ordinances.
But in the survey that Michigan City did they do existing homes or did they do lots?
We're doing-
My impression that was
We're doing
homes.
lots,
It's lots.
because people might build.
If the lots aren't buildable now, what would cause them to become buildable for the sake of the sewers? I mean,
If they're not buildable now,
well, it's buildable because I got several lots on these across my residence. Those lots you consider as non-buildable for taxation purposes because you can't put a septic in.
well, and if that was the reason, it's no longer the reason.
What it is right now is,
Yeah.
Right. But if
No, it's not.
when the sewer comes in, if those lots are the minimum size, the 6,000 square feet, then they would be buildable lots, and they would have to have a hookup. Am I right?
I think that's going to be...
yeah, I'm
I don't, we haven't, I have to admit, we haven't thought that through, and that's probably a discussion for
I
now.
don't think you'd have to be paying the $128 if you didn't have a residence there. There'll probably be a lateral, but unless there's a residence, it's my understanding from these discussions, informal I realize, I don't think you'll be charged until you get an actual residence on it.
Maybe it'd be
They
something
want to
like,
they want to have it set up so they don't have to tear up the road every time somebody does something.
and maybe that would be something like what we originally talked about, where there's a penalty if you hook up later to make up for the fact that you haven't been paying into the capital fund. So, yeah, that might be a solution to that. Again, that's probably not going to be in our hands. That's probably in Michigan City Sanitary ballpark and the revolving fund people. Other comments? Council comments?
I guess I'm in between.
Go ahead.
People or council. I just wanted to say that all in this very short, a little over 2 months, I'm very pleased with what the response that I've had from all 5 council members. But what I wanted to urge is that everybody needs to know that the phone calls come in to the town hall. We had a situation that we worked out very well with Chris Willoughby. We sent out some citations, and he thought he wouldn't burden us with the citations, thinking that everybody would call the attorney. And of course, I think almost everybody who got a citation called the town hall, and we had not been informed. And the same thing happens with building permits. We have people call up, and they've been accustomed to calling up and finding out whether they've got a building permit. And I have to tell them, I don't know, and and they're not always on the website. So what I'd like to urge is that maybe we set up something. We've now got 2 council members on the building commission, that we have some way of getting that information over there. Because when people call up and I have to tell them, they say, well, the meeting's last Friday, and it's Thursday, and do I have a building permit? And I said, I don't know. So, we just, we're doing well, and I'm very pleased with all the cooperation I get from everybody, but I'm hoping that we can do better in terms of when there's information, you got to expect the fact that they're always going to call the town hall before they call the attorney or the commission. So, thank you.
Claims approval.
Claims approval. I have added 2 checks to your, there's a check for $5,900. You'll see it on the check register that I sent out. But there's a check register, there's a check that was cut for Crazy Nelson that came in after I had to send the things out. And another check for $2,800 for some emergency tree work with Maple City Tree. So what I'm going to read is a little more than what you have on your list. Check number 17034 through 17107, totaling $130,094.49, and salaries for February of 2020 were $55,026.95.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make the motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.